Hi, this is Sara Levin, the Artful Inker, an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in the United States. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today is the Global Stampin' Video Hop, and we're sharing techniques that seem to be popular right now. So, for my technique, I'm going to be showing you 3 cards using those strips that we all cut off as we make cards for ways to turn those into beautiful cards. So let's get started. For this first card using the colored strip technique, I've got a piece of basic white that is 1 3/8 by 4. And I've got my paper trimmer, and I'm going to stick that in at the 1/4 inch just to the right of the track. And I'm going to take my pencil and just lightly draw a line along that 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to put my paper in at 2, and I want to make a mark here at the 2-inch mark. Okay, and then I'm going to pull in my Playful Alphabet dies. And the first thing we're going to use is this letter L, and I want it to sit on the 1/4 inch mark and the top of it be just to the left of that midway point. And the reason I'm going to the left of it rather than spot on, as it's a 5-letter word, you would think that L needs to be right in the middle, except that L's take up less space than the other letters do, and to be evenly spaced on the ends, you start your word just to the left. So I'm going to take a piece of washi tape and tape this in place. Again, I'm checking to make sure that I'm sitting on that line and not above it. And then I want to put my E in on the line, and I want to check to make sure that I'm straight. Of course, it would probably be better if I am straight on the grid paper, as I'm checking to make sure if these are straight, because then I'm lining up with the lines. Okay, and then I can put down my H, the small section of the H at the top, and I'm checking to make sure that my spacing between letters is about the same. Keep moving that as I touch it. Okay. And straighten that up. Oop. Can't check and make sure if it's straight if I've moved it off the line. Okay, so I'm going to take this and die cut the whole word, and I'll be right back and we'll put this card together. So you've got your die cut piece, and then I've got my kneadable eraser, and just going to erase my pencil marks. So I'm going to set this aside then. And then I've got a piece of basic white that's 4 by 5 1/4. And I'm going to bring my trimmer in again. And I just want to make a mark here at 2 inches on either end. And that will help us to be straight. So I love these cards because they're great for using up those strips of cardstock that we all cut off of our layers, and I do save those. So we're going to put the polished pink right here on the line, and we're going to use the grid paper and our dots to help us line that up, because since we're doing straight pieces, they do have to be straight on here. Normally, I don't do a whole lot of checking pieces for absolutely, truly straight. Let me move that one over. It's just a smidge long, so I'll trim that up when I'm done. This color is Bermuda Bay. And we're going to put another one at the bottom. Each of these strips is 1/4 inch by 5 1/4. And then I've got my coastal cabana here. And I know some of you all may be wondering why I'm screwing the lid back on my multi-purpose glue after I use it. And it keeps it from getting dried out and getting those little sticky glue dots at the end of the, okay, so there's our stripe, and I'm just going to turn this over and use my snips to cut off any little overhanging piece. That looks good. Okay, so next we're going to bring our hello back in, and let's just turn that over and add some glue dots. I think most of these are going to need to be minis, so we're just going to switch to those. And because you've cut a fair amount away from this strip, you do want to be generous with these mini glue dots so that you give this piece as much support as possible. Let's see if, oops, thought I had one in my hand. Let's see if we can get one there. Okay, so we'll pull all the backing bits off. I'm just going to add one more right in here where the H is formed. Okay, and let's straighten this piece up. Okay, and then let's put some dimensionals on the back here. And I've got a thick basic white base, and it's cut at 5 1/2 by 8 1/2 and scored at 4 1/4. And then we're going to add some Playing with Patterns resin dots. And I've got my take your pick here. Let's put the lid down and just add a couple of these dots in. There we go. Move this one just a little bit. Okay, and there's our first strip card using our leftover cardstock strips. Let me clean up just a moment and I'll be back with a couple more ideas. For the second strip card, I'm going to be using the Hand Pen Petals bundle, which is the Hand Pen Petals stamp set, and the pinned flowers dies. And we're going to start with a piece of Very Vanilla that is cut at 4 by 5 1/4, and then I've got Petal Pink, Blushing Bride, and Soft Seafoam, and we're going to adhere those strips to the Very Vanilla. And I'm doing that just for my own convenience, so that we're holding them all together instead of them being loose strips. And each of these measures 4 and by 1 3/4. Just want to make sure that I'm straight. Let me give this a little nudge to the right. And we get this kind of ombre effect with our strips. Okay, give that a second to dry. And I'm going to grab my paper snips, and we're going to check and make sure that there's nothing hanging over the edge. I've got a tiny bit here, and that's easy to take care of with the snips. Okay, so next I want to do a little bit of stamping. So I've got some scrap paper, and I've got one of the stemmed floral from Hand Pin Petals, and I'm going to ink that with basic gray. And I just want to lightly give a rub all the way around, and we're going to do kind of a random pattern here. And again, I'm going to take my time and rub all over the back of that pattern. And let's ink that again. Just trying to decide what part of our stem we want each time, so that we do get an interesting pattern on here. Okay, and this time I'm going to come in and turn this the other way. And one more. Okay. Okay, so there's our background. I'm going to next, let's move these out of the way. I've got a piece of Very Vanilla, and I'm going to add it to one of the foam adhesive sheets. So pull the backing back on that, and let's add this. Oh, didn't get it down quite far enough. So take your time with it. Let's be a little here. If I start at the top, that would be a better choice. And then put that down. Now I'm going to leave that backing sheet in place while I use my snips and cut down around this piece. That way I can cut through easily, and I'm not getting adhesive all over my snips. Okay, so now the backing sheet comes away. I'm going to take this piece and die cut it, and I'll be right back. So we've got our lacy pinned flowers die cut, but before we use that, we need a sentiment. So I've got a piece of basic gray, and I'm going to rub that with my embossing buddy. Again, it's one of those strips that I've cut off of something. That's today's theme, is those strips that we all cut off and can use again in our creating. So stamping the thanks from Hand Pin Petals in Versamark. And then let's sprinkle that with our gold Stamp and Emboss powder that's part of the metallics selection of embossing powders. That comes in a 3-pack. Set that aside, and then we'll heat this. I'm going to heat up my gun first, and then use my heat tool behind my cardstock so that I'm not blowing any of that loose embossing powder, or any embossing powder that may be loose. I'm not blowing it around on the front, so you're less likely to end up with little flecks. Okay, there's our thanks. And then I'm going to pull in the paper trimmer because I want a very straight edge on this. And let's move that. Excellent. So I'm coming up so that it's just larger than my word. Set that aside. And then let's go ahead and add dimensionals on the back of our main layer. Oops. We're going to put a couple more here. And I see just a little bit of cardstock here along the edge, so I'm going to take that little bit off. It really is a little tiny bit, as you can see, that's fallen off here. Let's brush it to the side. I've got a thick, very vanilla base that's 4 1/4 by 11 and scored at 5 1/2. Let's go ahead and put this layer on. Make sure my base is straight on the grid paper. Okay, and then let's pull our die cut in. So I've got the backing paper here, and I'm going to take your pick. You could at this point leave all of those little pieces in, but I want to pop a couple of them out. This will give us a little more detail look, and they're easier to take the small pieces out now that the backing paper has been removed. They've all been cut. It's just a matter of my fingers picking them up and sticking them down over here on the side. It's good to have a piece of scrap paper to stick them to. And let's do just a couple more of these. You can, as I said, take out as many as you care to, leave as many as you care to. I just want some more of the color from our strip background to show through. So I'm taking out the larger pieces. I'm going to leave the flower centers because I don't care to take the time to poke those out. Okay, let's gently remove this from my fingers and choose our position here. And because this has the adhesive foam on the back, it adheres and has a little lift, just like having dimensionals on the back. Okay, and then let's take our sentiment, and I want to add dimensionals along the back of the sentiment, and I'm going to place that here. So I want a double stack on this end so that it's going to lay even. And I do want to add a little bit of ribbon to this card. I'm going to use the fine art ribbon. and I want it to run just under my sentiment. So with my sentiment setting in place, I'm going to slide this under and then tear this. And let's take this. I'm just going to use the end of that to burnish and then pick this up. There we go. Should have picked that up with my tool while I had it out. Okay, and to make this a little extra sticky, I'm also going to put some tear and tape on the back of my ribbon. And of course, I'm doing this. Let's move it up where you can see that. Okay. Let's see if that's going to be enough. And I want to cut this end off to neaten it up. Put that out of the way. Use my fingers to burnish a little bit. And then I'm going to take your pick to come in here and pull my backing off rather than trying to find the place with my fingernail. It's a little trickier with ribbon than it is with, there we go, than it is with paper. Okay. And then we're just going to create a little ruffle here, which is where that extra bit of tear and tape on the ribbon comes in handy to hold that ruffle in place. And I'm just checking to see how much of the tape I still have to cover underneath as we work. Okay, so I can use just a tiny bit more tear and tape on my ribbon. So I'm going to tear a piece off. I'd rather add than have too much, because you don't always use tear and tape on your ribbon. Okay. And again, take the backing off. There we go. And give this another little ruffle. Okay. And now let's use my scissors and cut that off. And take my ribbon out of the way. And then we're going to set this right over top of that little bit of ribbon accent there. And there's my strip card using hand pin petals. Let me clean up, and I've got one more to share with you today. Okay, and for the last card, we're going to start with a piece of basic white that's 4 by 5 1/4. I'm going to take my paper trimmer and place my cardstock in at the 2-inch mark and score down the middle lightly. It's just important that you be able to see the score line. And we're going to use those 1/2-inch strips that we all have from cutting off for our cards. So I'm going to put this in and mark at 1/2 inch and then turn this so that that tick mark and the corner are in my trimmer. And then I'm going to take this and let me grab my adhesive and add that to the back here. And I'm going to start with my piece so that it's up here at the corner and lined up with that score line. So let me bring this up. Yes, okay. So let me take the next strip, and I'm going to cut this one in half just because I don't think we need a strip that's that long. And again, I'm going to put a tick mark in at a half, and then put the half and I'm going to flip it over for the other side, and half and the point, and cut. Add my adhesive. And match that up here. Okay, and then we're going to do that again. So score it a half, put the point in, cut up to the half. That one's not quite cut at the half, so don't turn your cardstock over. And then we're going to come right down to the line and add this right up against that center score line and our piece of cardstock here. So I'm going to keep doing that, and I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so I've almost finished. I've done all of the matching V pieces, but then I need to finish this, and thought, since it's not exactly what we were doing before when I turned the video off, that I'd come in and show you what I'm doing here. So I'm just going to lay pieces in here, super easy. And same thing here. And come across here. And come across this little bit of adhesive here. And then let's dab a tiny bit of adhesive in up here. Oop. Might have dabbed a little much. And one of those little triangles that we cut off the end as we were forming our V will go right in here. Okay, and then let's take our paper snips. You may want to work on your silicone craft sheet as you do this, so that you're not sticking to your work surface. If you're like me and got a little exuberant with the amount of adhesive that you added to your strips. Some of mine are out past our base layer. So just using the base layer as the gauge of where to cut. Okay, and let's trim up the bottom here. Okay. And then we're going to do one last little bit of gluing here. So a dot here. And again, I'm getting a little crazy with my dots. And we're just going to, since I already cleaned up my little triangles that I had cut off, I'm just going to use a piece of one of these that's left, but you could certainly use those triangles that you've cut away. Okay, now let's go back and, oops, leave these on long enough that they're adhered. Okay, let's move this mess out of the way. And we don't need our little strips any longer. This is a great project to use a lot of those little white strips that we all collect. And at least for me, it does make a difference that you rotate the cutting, as I showed you, one from one side of the strip and the other from the other side of the strip, so that they match up well down that center. I tried cutting everything from the same side, and that did not work well for me. If you have luck with that, fabulous. Okay, I'm still overhanging on this corner, and that won't be a good look. Okay, there we go. Mess out of the way. Let's add some dimensionals to the back of this and go ahead and put it on our card base. And then we'll move on to the next little bit. So our card base is 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5 1/2, and it's a piece of thick basic white. And I just love that these little strip design cards have become so popular. They're an excuse for me to pull out all of my paper strips and create with them. So I'm going to set our base aside, but that herringbone is really pretty. And we need to do a tiny bit of stamping. So I've got a piece of basic white, and I'm going to rub that with my embossing buddy. And I'm using that Thanks again from the Hand Pen Petals. That's such a pretty script. And give that a nice rub. Put this out of the way and grab my piece of scrap paper, and we're going to emboss again with the gold Stampin' Emboss powder. Oh, well, that was lucky. Didn't knock my embossing powder off. Okay, let's put this aside and turn on my heat tool and get it nice and warm, and then heat from behind so that you're not blowing the embossing powder around. I see a couple of light flecks here, so I'm just going to take my finger and wipe them before they have a chance to stick permanently. And then let's rotate this around. Okay, there we go. And I want to trim the edge of this. So let's bring the paper trimmer in. And again, I just wanted just a smidge longer than the word. Okay, now this time I've used the batik dies. If you took my boutique class, you have them, and I've cut gold foil. It also has the foam adhesive sheet on the back. Let me pull the backing piece off, and then I'm going to pull these pieces out. You could put them back on that backing sheet and use them another time. We're not going to use them today, but as you can see, they come right on out of here. And of course, I'm sticking them to my fingers over here on the side. Let's pull this little bit off and this little bit off. Okay, so bring our card base back in and line it up on the grid line And since this has a center line, I do want to make sure that I am centering the design on the center line. And I'm going to add this thanks down here in the corner. Just a clean and simple card with this chevron design down the middle. And then we're going to embellish. And to do that, we're going to use some of this fine art ribbon. I'm going to say I've got, about an inch here, maybe just a smidge more, but fold it over. And let me grab my mini glue dots back here, and take your pick and add a couple of glue dots, one in the middle to hold it together, and one on the back side. And then I like the spatula for this next little bit, and I'm going to place this on the spatula and then put it right under the edge of my sentiment here. And okay, so we have our little tab here. That's all good. And then I've got some of the wonderful gems. These will be back with the mini catalog that goes live on August 3rd. And I just love them. They are clear with a little bit of gold fleck in them, and they are perfect for adding just a little something. So that is our third and final card using a strip technique. Thanks for stopping in today. This was Sara Levin, the Artful Inker of theartfulinker.com. You can give this video a thumbs up and share it with your card making friends. If you're in the United States, I'd appreciate it if you do some of your Stampin' Up! Shopping in my store. When you subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the bell, you'll be notified the next time I upload a video. And of course, you'll want to check the description below for the next video in today's Global Stampin' Video Hop. Thanks for stopping in. Have a great day. Bye.